Welcome to Conversations with Sarah. I'm Sarah Reddan, creator of the SRT2 Self-Care Club. Thank you for joining us today. You can find me on most social media platforms as SRT2 Self-Care, but Facebook is where I'm most active. So today I am joined with by Luna, who I absolutely love speaking with, and we are going to have a conversation around healing the healers. Hi Luna, thank you so much for joining me.
Hi Sarah, I'm so happy to be here again.
I love talking to you, and I love being in your communities. I would have you on every week if I could. I'm so excited to talk about what we're going to talk about today. But before we get into that, for people that don't know you and won't fangirl like I do yet, can you tell people who you are, please?
Oh, excellent. Yes, of course. So I'm Luna, and I am a spiritual healer and spiritual teacher with my business, Black Moon Cove, who I run with my husband, Raven. We are both high priest, high priestess, pagan witches as well. So we do lots of different spiritual healing, teaching, courses, spell work. So yeah, that's me.
Got really beautiful communities that people who feel like they identify with the work that you do can come in and connect with other people in there. So we've got the businessy bit out of the way straight away, and we can dive straight in. So we're talking today about healing the healers. So what do you mean by that?
So what I mean by that is people who are called to this path of being a healer. And healers can be one of a couple of things, really. You can be a natural healer, somebody who has always had, I would say, probably quite nurturing and parental feelings from being such a young baby, child, toddler. You know, you always wanted to look after people. You had the healing touch. People have always been gravitating towards you. It can sometimes be to your detriment as well, unfortunately, because your light as a healer can sometimes attract sort of people who are maybe vulnerable, in need of healing, but maybe only know that on a very subconscious level, and they gravitate towards you, and you find yourself, I guess, fixing people quite a lot and in possibly codependent toxic relationships.
And I can straight away say, absolutely, I've been in that space. Absolutely, I've been in relationships that I would define now as codependent, and in spaces where I had no boundaries, and people have always talked to me about things, whether it was when I was a 16-year-old checkout girl up until obviously as a counsellor. That's what I trained to do. The big difference being, as a 16-year-old checkout girl, I had no life skills and no way of knowing how to keep myself in a safe space. So I think it's really important, if you don't necessarily identify as a healer in a professional capacity, as you're saying, you may well still have that part of who you are.
Massively. You've just absolutely hit the nail perfectly on the head there, Sarah, because I was actually working with someone a while ago who is working in a supermarket on checkout, stocking shelves, and said, I don't feel like what I'm doing is really helping people, but I feel like people constantly stop me in the shop and end up sort of giving me their life story, and I'm like, I'm just trying to stock the rice here, you know, I don't know what to say. And it is true, it can feel overwhelming. It can feel something that, if, say for example, because of my job, I generally use energetic protection as a habit, as something I walk into work doing, as if I was brushing my teeth, getting dressed, energetic protection done. Whereas for this other person, going into a supermarket, it wasn't part of their habit on a morning to get ready. And it's kind of saying, if you identify with some of the things I've said, which could suggest you're a natural healer and have that light about you, it's worth starting to check in with having good protection energetically, knowing grounding techniques, getting a support network of people who understand what you're going through. So yeah, and the other side of healing, so you could be a natural healer, you may even pursue that as a profession. Other people may not have always vibed with being a healer. They may not identify with some of those characteristics. However, through life experiences, possibly traumatic ones, and they've done their own healing, overcome a lot, and fell in that path and trained and want to share that love and sort of what they've understood and learned on their journey and give that back to people going through similar things. So there's kind of a couple of different pathways to go into to be a healer.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's, like you say, when one of the other things is, if you've been through really difficult life situations and you've learned your coping strategies, you've built your resilience, and you've come out the other end, there is, I think, quite often a call to want to help other people not have to experience all the things that you've experienced. The flip side of that is that the work can also be quite triggering.
Absolutely. And I think that's why we are talking about something very crucial here, because this conversation is about healing the healers. So as somebody who might be healing others, or just naturally fall into that, if you are feeling quite triggered, you find yourself quite overwhelmed, you feel yourself becoming very drained consistently to the point where you're going to burn out, it's important you do your own healing. And you look after yourself. You have somebody who's maybe in a healing network, and you look after each other. Those support networks are absolutely crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. It is really important to have sort of community and network. And like when I was a counsellor, you have regular supervision. It's something that you really, really check in with. It's expected. But there's lots of other healing professions where it's not taught as a part of your journey into being a professional, how important it is to have a safe space that you can go and talk about how the work that you're doing is impacting on you. I think it's so easy to get sort of to a stage of burnout and not notice that you're there. If you're really driven to help people, I know it definitely is, again, a place that I've been through, and I notice now when I've got stuff going on for me that it's like, oh yeah, I need to take a bit of time. And that's where having community, having networks, having supervision, like formal space that you go and talk quite, safely boundaried, can really help you sort of notice if you're getting into that fatigue space. Because often I think as healers we can feel we need to give a little bit more, even if we don't have a little bit more to give.
Yeah, and what comes with that is the guilt of not feeling like you're doing enough. So you're constantly chasing this like unrealistic expectation of being this almighty healer who's constantly on top of it, constantly has it together. Who has it together all of the time? I mean, I want to meet them.
Definitely not. And I think the word that came to mind for me then is that's ego, isn't it? That very much is our ego feeling like we somehow need to know everything, because we in our business are being told, I mean, I don't know about you, but we're often told from like business coaches and spaces like that, you need to be the expert, you need to be the expert. And I have an interesting relationship with the word expert. It feels a little bit ick. I know what I'm talking about. I've trained in stuff. Am I the expert on the person that I'm working with? Absolutely not. They are. I'm the expert in what I know. And even that's taken me quite a long time to feel okay to say. And I think there can be an unrealistic expectation that as an expert, you constantly have your shit together, and you're never triggered by anything, nothing, like you just sort of, floating through life in this like ethereal kind of space of love and light, and everything's perfect all of the time. And really, it's real life. We live real life too. We just maybe have a little bit more knowledge, but that doesn't mean things don't come up and happen for us.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to find that balance as a professional healer between being somebody that people know that they're safe with you, and you do have them, you have confidence and knowledge, you're not sort of really falling apart, otherwise you probably couldn't do your professional healing job very well at that point. However, it is important to balance that with being human and sharing when you're needing time to self-care. Or I think personally that's something I struggle with, to kind of see that part of me of when I do need to step back, or that I have been struggling with boundaries, almost because we build ourselves up as a healer that you don't want people to feel like you haven't got it together. So there's that fear, isn't there, about people sort of thinking, whoa, well, I don't know if I'll want to sort of turn to them for advice. However, it's just human, it's just normal. We are all learning together, and I think that's what's beautiful. I'm still learning. I am consistently learning, and I always will. throughout lifetimes, because that's the point, and we all learn together, and that's what healing is.
I think that, to me, there's something kind of really ethical in a healer being able to say, I am taking space for myself. These are my boundaries. For where I am now, I would be less likely to work with somebody who I felt had no boundaries and had no awareness of how to look after themselves. And that's very different in my eyes, to somebody going, hey, I'm realizing that I'm doing just a little bit too much now, so I'm scaling back on this and I'm scaling back on that. I'm choosing to put my energy here, I'm choosing to put my energy there. Because to me, that is modeling what I want someone to hold space for me in that way, and to be letting me know that that's okay to do. Because I will confess that I do sometimes get that kind of comparisonitis. I notice that comes up for me, because I feel like I'm quite boundaried in when I will work, when I will do stuff, how I work, how I will be messaged on social media. And I can notice sometimes other people do that very differently. Or I notice that people show up everywhere all the time, giving so much of themselves. And I'm sat here going, I just don't know how they do it. I just don't know how they do it. And I think, oh, am I? And I have to check in. It's like, actually, I'm doing what's okay for me and what is right for me. And my community will hopefully feel that that's a good space for them, because like attracts like often, doesn't it? And it's, you know, hopefully I'm holding the space in the way that needs to be held, but that also works for me and not all of these other people. And I think it can feel like, when you're self-employed, when you're trying to do your own business, when you are in a helping space, there's almost this pressure to always be available.
I mean, the problem is about we want to be as authentic as possible, but to be authentic we have to drop the fear of comparing what that looks like to other people. Like you said, that comparison culture, we're absolutely drenched in how to be on social media, what platforms to be on, how often to be on there. You know, the tips and advice are great, but I think we can get lost as well down that road, and then it just becomes overwhelming. Personally, I find social media quite overwhelming. I have quite sensitive empath abilities, and it can really drain my energy to be on there too much. So we have to make quite strong boundaries with what platforms we're on. And then I have those pings of worry that I'm not present enough, or I'm not on enough platforms, or I'm not posting enough. And I just think, well, you know, I do okay. I love my business. I've got wonderful people who book with us, and you know, I'm very blessed. What more do I need to give? I give enough for me. And I think authenticity, we all talk about, and everyone straight away possibly is a bit of a defense mechanism, says, of course I'm authentic, I'm no liar kind of feeling. But it's not about being a liar. It's just about, no, really, check in with your heart. What's your heart telling you right now? If you really truly listen, without comparison, without worrying about what you think you should do, what does authenticity and honesty feel like to you? What does that look like to you? And it's okay, and it should look different to everyone else.
And that's it, isn't it? It is making that decision that works best for you, and because we're talking about self-care, what you need, because if we're everywhere doing everything, when do we have energy to actually do the work with the clients? Because I don't know about you, I would be completely exhausted and not capable. I would have nothing left to give if I was 24/7. I mean, I love TikTok, but I'm not particularly active on it. As I say, Facebook's where I spend my time. You can probably find me most places, but that's not where I put my energy. Facebook's where my communities are, and that's where I want to be the most present and available.
The same. I find Facebook a little bit more gentle. Maybe it's just because I'm a bit older, or that's kind of like the space that I've been the longest, you know, these newer places. And I kind of just struggle vibing with. I think they all have very different energies, don't they? And I think it's important that you maybe try them all out, see if they vibe with you, see how drained you feel when you use it, and then make decisions based on your experiences of using it. But I mean, this calls for people who aren't professional healers as well, those natural healers. You know, there's still a lot of people out there who use things like social media just personally and are on quite a lot of platforms. I don't know how young people do it these days. They're on everywhere. They must just go from media to media to media, you know, flicking on all these different apps. I mean, it just must be a complete overwhelm to the psyche and the energy body. So I think it's just going back to that authentic decision making. It's important that we check in day by day as well, because what we can handle might look different one day to another. One day you might feel very called to do a few TikToks, or, you know, spend a bit more time with a few more clients or what have you. And then another day you might think, do you know, I'm just going to stay in bed with a cup of coffee for an extra hour a day. And that's okay. It's not putting pressure on yourself to do anything that you don't feel on as what you need that day.
Is there any other kind of practices that you use to sort of check in with, sort of making your own decisions and sort of being, you know, authentic in that ebb and flow of energy and space that you're in, and making sure that your needs are being met in your work and the things that you do?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a really good daily habit of mine is getting up. I mean, I'm an early bird. My power time is from like 5-6 o'clock in the morning. So I know not everyone will be that, and that's fine. But I always make time, that early time of the day, where I honestly check in with myself. I often do a meditation. I call it a spirit team meeting. So I call upon my spirit team and we'll have a little sort of check in with each other, and I can communicate my needs with my spirit team. We'll have a little meeting together and think about what is authentic and realistic aims for the day. And when I've done that meditation, I might do something like yoga or move my body a little bit, and then look at my to-do list from then and take things out if I feel like I need to take things out and they can be moved around. If something can be delegated, I'll delegate, which can be a big block for people. Delegating can be very difficult for people to do, because no one will do it how you do it.
Letting go of the control as well.
Yeah, it's really tough, isn't it? Because it can be a trauma response as well, you know, having to have a certain level of control in your day, and taking the lead on things. But it can very much be a big drain if you don't know how to healthily just pass things on to the people who you think could do it, and be okay that it won't look exactly the same way that you might do it. And that could go anything from typing something out or a phone call or just loading the dishwasher. If it's not done the same way you would do it, then that's got to be okay. So yeah, I think setting yourself up each day to honestly check in and having that honest conversation with yourself, because if you can't be honest with yourself, then who can we then pass that on to?
And that's it. It's very easy to kind of get caught up in the idea of the things that you should be doing, that you could be doing, to either, you know, from a perspective of being supportive to your friends and your family and the people that are around you, or in your work. There's always more that the world needs from you, but you don't always have that more to give. And I think it's so important, like you say, to just really check in and see where you're at with things, and you know, where your social battery is, or where your ability to be compassionate and have empathy, because compassion fatigue is real. It is real. And so people do get trauma, secondhand trauma from the things that they hear. We do get completely depleted, and if we're not topping ourselves back up, then we don't really have anything to give.
Yeah, exactly. And we fall so easily into that trap, don't we? We fall so easily into habits of just doing what we've always done, doing what we think we should do, comparison, worried about how we might be judged if we say no or don't do something that we were going to do. Or, and like you say, it can turn into resentment energy, and you don't want that. Certainly as a professional healer, you don't want to get to a point where even tiny flickers of resentment energy are starting to seep into your work and life, because you're a healer and that's not energy you want to have around you. And the only way to prevent that is to look after yourself and do what honestly serves you.
So how do you keep yourself topped up? So you've talked about how you start the day. What do you do? Life habits that help keep you in that good space?
Well, lots of coffee. No, I do have like coffee breaks. No, quite honestly. So I would say when I look at my day plan, what I've got in, as a professional healer, I make sure I've got sufficient time between appointments, so that I know when an appointment ends, I have enough time to maybe sit in the garden, have a coffee, or do a little meditation, or just walk around the living room and have a chat with Raven or something like that, and just ground myself in between appointments, and setting firm boundaries around how late people can be to appointments, you know, because I think people might forget. I don't think anybody would purposely take the mick, but I do think people sometimes forget that we as healers are running a business, and that is a practical thing as well as a compassionate thing. So as a healer, I'm very ready and willing to talk to people and to help people. But yeah, there has to be boundaries within that. So I make sure those are stuck to. And throughout the day, yes, I would take at least a couple of breaks where I mindfully drink my coffee, watch the birds out the window. You know, even just, you know, you talk through, I think in the group, like a wonderful mindfulness activity of drinking or eating, and that's a really nice thing to do as well. Lots of grounding. And then even later on in the day, checking in again with myself and seeing, how am I feeling? Oh, I'm feeling a little bit like I could have had enough already today. And then if I look at my to-do list, I think, well, is it things that I could move around? Yeah, okay, well, let's do that then and finish now. And it's just being honest and not saying, well, I'll just push through and get it done.
Yeah,
Honestly.
and having compassion, because I know it can be really hard for people when they've got a to-do list and they haven't achieved everything, to feel like there's some level of failure. And it really isn't. I mean, I occupy time a little bit differently, and so I have a whiteboard on my fridge. I've got things in my diary that, you know, my appointments and stuff I have to do. I have a whiteboard on my fridge where I write every week the absolute things I have to turn up for, so client appointments, or, you know, there's, if I'm creating a hypnotherapy or something and I've got a deadline, absolute things that have to be done on a day. And that's maybe 2 or 3 things. I don't give myself, I have ongoing tasks I need to do, and some of those have deadlines, but I don't particularly have a to-do list in the traditional, I must do all of these things today and tick it off. I'm a person that requires lots of freedom in my structure, because as soon as I start writing all of the things down, I'm overwhelmed. Just the act of writing it down feels like a big job. And when we're told to be organized and all of these things, for some people that can feel massive, like just writing stuff down. So I think there's something in really finding the tool that works for you. It's brilliant that we've got all of this technology we've got that we talked before. I like technology, you prefer pen and paper. It's great we've got all this technology, but if it doesn't work for you, don't use it. There's all of these different ways we can do stuff to keep ourselves organized. And of course, give things a try. But if it really doesn't feel like it's nurturing, it really doesn't feel like it's supportive, and it feels like it's more work and it's more exhausting, it's like, no, throw it in the bin and just try the next thing that's going to work for you. Or at least that's how I feel about it, because I think we can put so much pressure on ourselves. If someone's gone, I use this technique, it's the best technique ever, you'll never be disorganized, and it doesn't work, it's like, oh, I'm doing something wrong. I said, no, that's just not the right thing for you. There's something else.
It's about authenticity again, though, isn't it,
Yeah.
Sarah? It's about checking in with what organisation means to you, and it's okay that someone else's organisation looks differently to yours. So you might look around and think, gosh, everyone's got all these sort of to-do lists and all of these great plans of the day, and I don't have anything like that, and that's okay. I'm the same. I call a to-do list flexible. You know, it's a flexible to-do list. What I have at the top is, like you said, all the essentials, so client appointments, things that I have committed myself to, and then things that can be delegated or shifted around if need be. And again, probably about 3 things a day, that's essential. And I think that works for me, but it might not work for somebody else, and that's okay.
Yeah, but I think like the language, like when we talk about to-do lists, I don't know about you, but I probably not now because you've got what you do, but I immediately think about the big checklist pads that have got 25 things, and it's like I don't know anyone that can do that much stuff in a day if it's not like a normal, like tiny little task that's being written down. It really is like you say, checking in with yourself, seeing what you need, making like decisions that are in your best interest, and kind of working with what works for you. I don't even know where to go next. So I've got some questions. So where your own experience as a healer, how has your own experience informed the work and the way that you are about healing?
Well, I think in regards to looking after myself as a healer, when I was younger, I was one of those people who everyone sort of gravitated towards. I was always the mother of all the groups that I was ever in, even though I was usually always the youngest one. And often found myself, and I wouldn't know the words at the time, but absolutely drained and overwhelmed. So I would have periods of time where I was around people all of the time and being that caretaker, but then periods of time where I couldn't leave my own room and was completely shut down, which is now what I know is like a healer's burnout. So I think from experiencing those cycles and experiencing the absolute burnouts that can happen, when I started running spiritual healing businesses about 15 years ago now, I think one of the main aims I wanted to do was show people that they could set those healing boundaries for themselves and look after themselves, and that's okay. More recently, I think because I share the message about healing, I always just kind of assumed I knew what I was doing in the way of looking after myself, because I'd been doing it for so long, and I think I'd just gotten into a habit of just, I guess, assuming I was okay and going through the motions without checking in with myself honestly. And that definitely led to a burnout at the end of last year. And I really struggled, and there was that energy of like, I don't know if I can continue doing this. If I keep going down this road, I'm going to experience a burnout like I did when I was younger. And I realised actually I wasn't being as authentic as I'd like to have believed. Because of that comparison and that pressure that we talked about earlier, you want to feel like you've got it all together. So I was on that kind of cycle until I couldn't be. And suddenly realised I need time off, I need to reset this and sort this. So my experiences have been just this cycle. Some time differences between when I've been burning out has differed throughout the years, but I have always come round to that burnout at some point, even if it's taken longer to get there. I have still continued that cycle of just not consistently checking in with myself enough. So I think now it is one of my missions to make sure that other people are doing that and helping each other with that as well. People, please do remind me. Have you checked in with yourself? You know, and I'll do the feedback. And I think just creating that norm of that it's okay to check in with each other honestly and seeing what we need. And having that honest circle and support. I think support networks are going to be a big thing.
Yeah. And like I say, you kind of get into a habit, don't you, of doing things that these things help me feel good, they help me feel topped up, and then maybe you're doing a bit more work and you're still doing the habits, but the habits, what you need has changed.
Yes, what you need is change. That's such a good way to look at it, because I think I'm a big yoga person. I'm actually a qualified yoga teacher as well. I just don't do it with the business, but I love yoga, and it's something I've always done. It's always helped fill my cup and make me feel grounded. I've never stopped doing that. So even when I was in that moment, I was still doing some so-called, I guess, like self-care practices. I was still doing those things. So like, well, I'm doing those things to look after myself. So why am I feeling like that? But I think it had just shifted.
Yeah.
And I had stopped myself allowing that change to occur, because even good change can be scary.
Yeah, and we were talking about this a little bit before we came in, weren't we? That change is difficult. Change can be really hard, even if it's change that you want. And even if it's only little change, because as we were saying, you are used to doing what you do, and our bodies don't particularly like the idea of change. It can feel a little bit threatening.
Yeah, I mean, even just thinking like on a subconscious, innate thing about safety and knowing, we fear the unknown, and that can come in lots of different guises, including the fear of change. Even if you feel like on the surface you're pretty good with change, you're quite a flexible person, still we can fall in that trap of just doing the same thing, the same routine day in, day out, because the safety in getting up at the same time, then we put the kettle on, then we do this. And it's just that habitual human instinct, I guess. Unfortunately, it means it's really difficult to check in with that and see, should I be doing this differently? This isn't vibing with me anymore. And then a big part of us, that fear voice, will go, no, everything's fine. You know, it's going well.
Just keep going, keep going on the going.
Push through until you can't push through, because you know, you cannot move. And unfortunately, that's the kind of challenge that we have in regards to change. And sometimes again, it can be a trauma response. Change can trigger us. Even small changes, you know, can be quite a trigger and fear response. So we'll have to keep that in mind as well. But as a healer or a natural healer, that's something to explore and look at as well, as to what triggers that fear when it comes to change.
And I think that's it. It is about sort of being curious, and it's exploring your reaction to change in a non-judgmental way, and being able to sort of really hold space for yourself and just have that inquiry, isn't it, about, you know, what's going on for me? Is it that I don't actually want to change the thing? I don't want to actually do any of this different stuff? Is it that I'm scared of it? Is it that there's this? And I mean, I'm always saying about being playful with stuff and trying to approach it in a playful way, and I like an experiment with what is coming up and what you might need. And maybe that's the way I deal with stuff, because I'm not very good with some change. Like if you tell me we're going somewhere for dinner and then that changes, like I can struggle with that. Then there's other change that I completely thrive on and I really enjoy. So it's once you get to have a little self-understanding, as all things, isn't it? Once you've got a little bit more understanding about yourself and how things come up for you, you can be like, oh, okay, and play in spaces and see what's going to work and what's going to help, and allow it to be something that you, even if you know you're not okay with, you can find the space that feels safe in the unsafeness of it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's understanding our own relationship with change, which will be absolutely personal. So you might deal with change in that way, I might deal with it another way. Everyone will have their own personal relationship with change. And that's because we navigate life through our own personal lens, through our own personal experiences and communication with the world around us, you know, the relationships we've had. We all have that unique lens of which we see the world through. And that includes change. And that's how we will try and work out what that connection, what that fear or relationship is with change. And then once you understand what your relationship with change is, you can start using that to the best of your ability. And it's understanding the triggers, because like you said, some things that may seem somewhat trivial for you actually could trigger that change. Oh no, I've already looked at the menu online.
Exactly. I know what I can eat, I know where we're going, like I feel comfortable in what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. It's a big thing.
But that, for most people, going out for a meal would not be a thing. But for me, it's a space that I don't I don't particularly enjoy. And so any kind of change around the plan can throw me a little bit. And that, you would think that's just the smallest thing in the world. Whereas if it's big stuff that people can see, I'm sort of more okay with that. But again, it's like you say, it's the things we've experienced through life and all of the stuff that we attach to it. And it's okay to have whatever reaction you have, because it is personal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to then understand the triggers in all of your life as well then. So we're talking about sort of saucy little triggers, but actually it means something to you. But that can also, on another hand, show us and highlight to us when we do need to check in with ourselves and whether we are being authentic, because when we are just going through that cycle, we're getting in those habits every day, we're doing the same thing and all of that, but are we getting triggered by little things that wouldn't normally? And that's going to be signs that you're burning out. So have you ever had those days where you've like spilled a bit of coffee, or you dropped your toast and obviously it's butter side down on the carpet, and you realise how thin the thread you were hanging on was and you just completely sort of blow up and melt down, you know, which is fine because, you know, toast butter side down is always a disaster. But generally, if you're keeping yourself grounded and everything, it's like, okay, that's not great, but I'll just clean it up and get another slice. But those little things, when we just spill something or somebody says something that usually would go over your head, or all these little things might just trigger you. It's like you're constantly living in, I guess, a survival mode. If you're already like a sort of blanket sort of 7 on your day-to-day life in the way of like anxiety scale, because you're not looking after yourself properly, little things might push you up to a 10 quite easily. So it's kind of recognizing in day-to-day life, how easily are you being triggered, how tired are you genuinely, without any real explanation. Those are signs that you may need to start really readdressing your needs and making sure you're really being authentic and working on those fear blocks that you might have regarding change.
And it's like you say, it's kind of another thing to notice is that, you know, self-talk around that stuff, isn't it? And how much self-compassion, because if you're already up here with it, and then you drop your toast, and then you give yourself a 2-hour critical lecture of all of the things you've done wrong in that week, it is just getting nearer and nearer and nearer to a shutdown, isn't it? It's sometimes it's going to be a bit more of a flashpoint, and you can notice and bring it back down. So it really is essentially like you're saying, checking in with yourself. And we've used the word grounding a lot, and I wonder if we should maybe give some explanation about that, because I feel like it's a term that healers use but is not always tangible. So what do you mean when you're talking about grounding?
Excellent question, Sarah. I think because it is used so much, it's quite an abstract idea, I guess, because it gets thrown around so much, but tangibly, grounding is the opposite to being overwhelmed. So if you think of overwhelmed as being quite chaotic, things have become too much for you, you can't feel calm and peace within you. The opposite of that is to be grounded. So that can sometimes be an easy way to define grounding, because again, it will be exactly personal to you. So just as what would overwhelm you will be personal to you, so the opposite of that, how to ground you, will be personal to you. But some main examples would be doing something like meditation or mindfulness. If you think of what's overwhelming you, how to counteract that, what's the opposite of that? Bringing some peace into your life to make you feel like, I guess, you are grounded to the earth. I don't know if you have done a roots meditation where you can sort of put roots from the base of your feet and root them down into Mother Earth and draw up some strength and peace, even in just 3 deep breaths. So it can only take you sort of 30 seconds if you want to do something quick. That's my go-to. If I'm feeling the overwhelm kind of trickling up, I'll just go, right, okay, unslouch. So sometimes you kind of
you feel your shoulders are up under your ears.
Yeah, and you realize when you kind of consciously push your shoulders down how much you are actually hunched up. So I do that. I sort of just move my neck a little bit, and then put my bare feet on the carpet, go outside if you wish, and I just take 3 deep breaths, and I root down some roots from the base of my feet all the way down, and I imagine the layers of the earth as well, so sort of the ground beneath me, the soil, the rocks, the sediment, all the way to the core where it's really hot, and drawn up that strength and calm in 3 deep breaths. You can also do stuff like yoga. You can go and have something to eat, and something nourishing, ideally. Fruit would be a brilliant one. Something that's come from the earth, like a vegetable, carrots, sticks, things like that. Drinking water, maybe with some lemon in it. Lots of different things, really. I mean, grounding could even be having a hug, you know. So if I'm having a day where I'm overwhelmed, Raven might be typing away on his end, and I put my hand up because we sit opposite each other with the computer, so we only see the top of each other's heads, but I might put my hand up and he'll say, "Are you okay over there?" And I'll say, "I could do with a hug right now." So he might come over, and I mean, I'm lucky I've got somebody that works with me. So little things like that. You could have a nap. You could sing, you could dance, something that grounds you in the moment. So it's mindfulness, I guess.
Yeah. And I mean, I've got a roots meditation in my membership, and that's something I use. That's sort of visualizing in, and then like the protection of light as well. Just to, if I'm having a day where it feels like there's a lot coming in at me, I think that can help. And I'm very aware that that's something I neglect often, is the protection part of what I need for my day. I was like, oh, yeah. I'm just like letting everything come in, like energetically, but we'll stay with a little bit more. We'll go to that another time. I love to dance, so that's something I share regularly. Like, I feel like it really does shift energy. I've got certain playlists that I listen to depending on where I'm feeling I am and what I need. I love like the mindful movement. So I do use chart songs to really shift my energy, but it's not just about dancing like I'm clubbing. It's a real connecting in with my own body and really kind of knowing what's going on for me. And I think it's also a really beautiful way of expressing emotion and releasing emotion, that can almost take you by surprise if it's a new practice, because music is so powerful and so healing. And with that mindful movement, I think it can be so powerful. And then it just, like you say, that lets go of some of that overwhelm and really connects you in with yourself. I'm usually barefoot anyway, but if it's safe for you to move around barefoot, it really does just connect you in, that connectiveness with yourself and grounding into earth and what you need.
It's shifting and transforming energy, and that's the point of grounding. So if we go from an energy that's quite chaotic and swirly, we are connecting in with that physically, and that's when we'll hunch the shoulders, we'll feel like we're kind of not breathing properly, we're panicking, even anxiety pains, we're overwhelmed. So if we counteract that with something that will help move our body or shift our energy, those things are perfect. I mean, dancing is something that people will have blocks with, because we are told that we shouldn't, or that it's silly, or what we might look like. Singing is another one that people might worry about doing. I love singing. I'm singing all of the time. I'll just be sort of, pushing out a tune when I'm just sort of cooking or working or something like that. And I think, again, it's about authentically being okay with how you express energy and channel energy and get rid of energy that you don't need. So overwhelm energy will have excess energy attached to it. So if you know how to release that excess energy, then perfect. It doesn't have to look like what anybody else does to release that excess energy. And it's absolutely valid, whatever you feel vibes with you.
And I think that's it. That's the main message, really, isn't it? Find what vibes with you and find what tops you up, what feels right for you, and go with what that is, and that might change.
Yeah, exactly. And I think having those support networks as well of other healers who will understand you. I run a Reiki circle, so anybody who is attuned to Reiki level 1 and above can join the Reiki circle, and that's a nice little check-in once a month. So yeah, it's
and
nice.
if they're
to
not
have
trained in Reiki, you also do that as well.
You need to come and do Reiki then.
Yeah, come and do Reiki. But all your details will be in the show notes anyway. I'm in your groups, you're in my groups, and you know that I think that is, you hold space beautifully, and I love being in your groups. So I would definitely say, like, if you're in my group, definitely go across to Luna's and Raven's spaces as well, because we offer different things in a different way, but with the same intent.
Yeah.
So
very similar ethos, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's fine, and it's find what works for you. Find that community. There can be, if you're more in the spiritual space, there can be spiritual groups that aren't going to fit for you, because it is a spectrum. It isn't, we aren't all just in the same place with the same feelings, the same thoughts, the same ethos, the same I want to even use the word morals, the same idea of what stuff is. So it's like, really do notice how spaces vibe for you and how spaces like feel for you, and like, don't be afraid to take yourself out of spaces that are not good for you, because that's overwhelming as well, trying to manage all of the stuff. Really connect in with your thing, and feel what is really important to you. That's what feels like the biggest thing of today is.
We just went the long way around.
Yeah, but you know, hopefully everybody enjoyed the view with us and enjoyed the journey along. Is there anything else that you want to kind of bring up today? Is there anything that I haven't asked you about that you would like to share?
I think one of the main things is about not being afraid of your gift. If you are a natural healer and you don't do this professionally, I feel like because I'm a professional healer, I come from the angle quite a lot, and I forget to sometimes address the people who work in jobs that could add to their overwhelm, absolutely, and don't have that spiritual support to cater and nurture that part of them. So for those people who are watching this or listening to this and sort of relate to that, I would say definitely work on energetic protection. It could be a discussion for a further podcast, Sarah.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, and I'm aware, because it's something like, I trained in Reiki originally over 20 years ago, and I've had weird and wonderful experiences and sort of disconnected from it because it just felt overwhelming. And one of the things that I notice is I can forget to be protective of my own space, and if you have no awareness about that, you can become very depleted, very exhausted, very, very quickly. I have awareness, and it's still an area that I need improvement in. So it's like, definitely explore. If it sounds like, oh, this sounds a bit like me, or you know, come and get involved, because I'm in your spaces and there's loads of things people talk about that I have no idea what they're talking about, because they're on a different path to me. They have different lens that they view stuff through, and it is all okay. We've all got different ideas and different experiences and different language, sometimes for exactly the same thing. And it's okay for it to be different experience.
Yeah, and I think you've hit the nail on the head again a little bit about the language, because I think people feel intimidated in spiritual spaces when they don't have the right sourcey terminology, or they maybe feel like they can't articulate what they want to say or how they want to share what's going on with them in those spaces, for fear of being judged or not knowing how to say things correctly. But obviously there is no correct way, there is no silly questions, there is no wrong way to put something. If you are feeling like you very much relate to this natural healing and you feel lost within that and not sure where to turn to, then please do come and see us in our groups at Black Moon Cove. We actually attract quite a lot of people who are new to this journey. It's strange, actually. We either attract people who are very new or very, very knowledgeable, so we kind of go often to either spectrum of either side of the spectrum with how we work. And I love working with people who are in the very beginning of that journey and have not much knowledge, and just that lovely light bulb moment where you can tell the thing, wow, somebody gets me. I've got someone I can talk to about this now. How powerful and beautiful that is. Never be ashamed or fearful of your gift of healing. That light that you shine is so powerful and beautiful. Yes, I know it's brought people some difficult experiences and difficult people. However, what a gift. I mean, what you could share with the world is so unique and beautiful. That, you know, embrace it. It's just learning how to protect yourself and have the right support network in order to nurture that part of you where you're not feeling so alone or overwhelmed or drained.
And I kind of feel like I just want us to put in there as well, like, you don't have to share it all with the world, but at least feel safe in the space that you're in with it. Because I feel like sometimes it can, I'm thinking of my own journey, there's like almost this pressure, like if you have skills, if you've got certain gifts, that you have to be doing it. It's like, you don't have to be doing it in a professional capacity, in a hobbyist capacity. No one needs to know, but you can, as long as there's something important in sort of you being able to be as connected as you want to be with the stuff, but also as grounded and protected and in a good mental health, emotional sort of state of being. Just being in spaces where people kind of will understand the things that you're talking about and the experiences that you're having can be really affirming, and just exactly what's needed to be like, oh, okay, other people do understand this, other people experience this, other people feel this, and this is how they help keep themselves safe, can be just exactly what's needed in that moment.
Yeah, that's so beautifully said, Sarah. It's so true. And I think a lot of people get put off by doing courses like Reiki, especially Reiki 2, when some of the content is about using Reiki with others. But you don't have to share that with, like you see, anyone, never mind use it as a business. It isn't about that. It's about your own personal development, your own spiritual health. Spiritual health is just as important as your emotional health, your physical health. To honor yourself spiritually in a way that vibes with you, that honors the gifts that you hold and gives you space to talk to people who understand you, is going to help you on such a bigger level than you ever realize. You know, when we're not on honoring that spiritual health side of us, we can sometimes suffer physically, emotionally, not realizing actually the cup we need to fill is the spiritual cup.
Yeah, and I'm going to share quickly. It really is a safe space to come and go, hey, this happened. I shared about my purple light experience in your space, and because it was a new thing for me, and everyone was like, yeah, this sounds great. And so it really kind of talked me through thoughts and other experiences, and it was completely non-judgmental, and it was very supportive. There was no prescriptive, it must be this is what's happening. It was just an exploration of ideas, and I can hand on heart say there has never been any other time in my life or any other space I feel I would have shared that in. So I think, you know, it's just makes such a difference. So I think I just want to be like, if you're curious, if it feels like it resonates with you, come and get involved. And then I feel like we probably do need to end now.
I will be talking too long now.
Because I think, well, I know that we'll just talk forever, because I love the topic and I love speaking with you. So is there anything you want to leave people with? Is there anything else you want to say?
Just as always, I think I said it last time, I want everybody to know that they are loved and safe, and it's okay to not be okay at times, and to know where your safe places are to reach out to for support. Check in with yourself. Don't compare your needs to other people's. It's okay that what you need looks different to what other people need. Just be honest and authentic, and you'll find yourself being more peaceful and grounded.
Thank you. I love that. And I am sat with, like, this is your journey, and you choose what it looks like. You choose your destination, you choose your route, and you choose, you know, whether you meander along, whether you jog or whether you run for a little bit. It's all your choice. So that's just sort of, yeah, a I feel like I probably could have said that more eloquently, but that's what you're getting today. So thank you so much for coming and being my guest.
Oh, thank you for having me, Sarah. Lovely to be here again.
Thank you. I've loved speaking with you. Thank you. I hope everybody has enjoyed listening. I will be back next week with a new guest. Until then, stay curious and be kind to yourself.